This is about a man named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I read a book written by a man called by others the hottest thinker in the world and a rock star. His name is Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He rejects anything conventional or institutional. Like Emerson and Thoreau, he is set against society and all social pressure. He likes the notion of the lone wolf genius, what he calls the magnificent, a romantic, high-flung figure taken directly out of a novel by Ayn Rand. There can be no doubt that he considers himself to be one of those consecrated individuals. He's got a convincing act. His voice has the feel of the Marshall McLuhan, look at me, I'm cooking, and everybody else is clueless vibe, if anyone remembers that. He feels that he and his life are pure and heroic. He writes that he takes a ritual bath after any contact with profane individuals, such as consultants, economists, Harvard Business School professors, journalists, and those of a similar depraved pursuit. He has it in for Harvard, the snootiness, I guess. He himself went to Wharton and has been on the staff of many universities. At one, he was the distinguished professor of risk engineering. Hoo-ha! He has worked for many firms around the world as an investment advisor, yet he rages constantly against economists and consultants. He writes that the preoccupation with efficacy is the main obstacle to a poetic, noble, elegant, robust, and heroic life, one very much like his. Efficacy is, very simply, the ability to get a job done satisfactorily. It is effectiveness, power, the core of the Protestant work ethic. Gainful employ is a kind of death, he writes, or at the very least, a submission. His books have topped the New York Times bestseller list and made him rich. He doesn't have to work. You will be civilized on the day you can spend long periods of time doing nothing, learning nothing, and improving nothing, without feeling the slightest amount of guilt, he writes. He proudly styles himself a flaneur. Being a Philistine, I had to look that up. It comes from 19th century France, a man who does no work, but who, in his idleness from the vantage point of leisure, objectively observes the world flowing by him on the streets of Paris and in the cafes, and so becomes a kind of sensitive device by which to register the culture and reflect upon its values. Also, a scourge to castigate it for its multitude of shortcomings. The book I read was The Bed of Procrustes, he being a man who abducted travelers, fed them well, and put them to bed. If they were too big for the bed, he trimmed them to size by cutting off their limbs. Too short, he put them on a rack and stretched them till they fit. Taleb uses that as a metaphor, the way society's preconceived notions trim and stretch new ideas to fit one old bed, the status quo. In politics, obviously, Democrat and Republican viewpoints are Procrustean beds. We see that every day. It gets old, but the politicians never tire of swinging away at it. He uses aphorisms, pithy statements to convey his thoughts. He says that he is trying to act as a guide on how to live and act in a world we cannot understand. That would be wonderful, but I think he's a charlatan, another word from the French, a huckster, a shyster, a con artist, selling philosophical snake oil, and people are buying it. I predict huge success for him on PBS. He'll be a regular Swami. He acts like a visionary prophet, tossing off meaty little Vedic nuggets for his hungry audience to digest. He's constantly harping on abstract qualities like courage and virtue or robustness and fragility, and they are difficult to define or to therefore dispute. Here is a beauty. The modern post-enlightenment, naive, pseudoscientific autism. You tell me. He rages against fools, nerds, suckers, and the weak. He's a bully, spouting stuff that can't be rightly understood or refuted. But it sounds great. He writes, "Writing is the art of repeating yourself without anyone noticing. Too bad, pal. I noticed. So you're a big shot. Big shots are a penny a dozen these days. And like a firework, they're dazzling, but they don't last long. You want an aphorism? Here's one. The little do big, while the big do little. Ooh, as they used to say, heavy. Heavy is light, but the light is heavy. Ooh."